This is all that's the new.
This is standard data center equipment.
AI is a growing portion of the energy usage of data centers, and data centers are a growing portion of the electricity use in the US. And so we have to be paying attention to that. We have to be thinking, anytime we see a demand growing in a particular area, how are we going to meet that? Because power generation always has environmental impacts, but what we know is that power generation via fossil fuels tends to have much tougher environmental impacts, both on climate change and on local populations who suffer the impacts of the pollution that it causes while it's operating. Often we're not directly matching up a data center with a power source, but we're putting a data center into a grid which is connected, and we're putting also new power sources on that grid. Now, there are some exceptions, but that's typically what happens. Typically, the most common thing that happens to meet increased demand is that we keep an existing power plant online. Most of our existing power plants are still producing electricity via fossil fuels. And most often that's natural gas if we need a new power source quickly.
Most of the energy goes into powering the graphics processing units, the compute. And as these GPUs generate answers and draw power in doing so, they also generate heat, which means we need water to cool those processes down to keep the machine room temperatures at a nice stable temperature. So we are talking about massive growth in data center infrastructure, energy use, and water use. Before the arrival of generative AI, there was a lot of optimism among all of the big tech hyperscaler data center operators in terms of achieving carbon-free compute. And the idea here would be that we would be net zero. You would consume some amount of energy, some amount of electricity in your data centers, and you would generate a corresponding amount of wind and solar energy to match that consumption. At the end of 2022, we saw the advent of generative AI with ChatGPT, and it became very quickly clear that in some of our published research as well, that it wouldn't be possible to rely on renewable energy alone, even with massive battery support, to get to net zero compute, given the size of the data centers we were now building. The conversation has shifted towards natural gas, which is particularly abundant in the United States. The attention is also focused on nuclear because nuclear is a really stable baseload generation that doesn't suffer from the intermittency, the comings and goings of wind and solar. So natural gas and nuclear has been increasingly a big part of the solution with massive investments from the tech companies in those generation sources. The question is, who pays for all of that infrastructure, those grid upgrades. And there is a risk that the data center operators are benefiting disproportionately from those energy investments, but then those costs are being distributed to the local ratepayers, the local consumers in those communities.